Welcome back to Baseball, Books, and Banter with me, your host, Nicole. As you can see, I'm back at home after a lovely Thanksgiving break. Went out to the Cape, spent time with my dad, my brother, his girlfriend, and other family members. It also was a time of remembrance. Last year, my mom passed away on the 28th, and unfortunately, Thanksgiving happened to fall on that day this year, so it was a little bit rough. But we got to visit her and leave some flowers and some winter accoutrements at her grave, and it was lovely, and it was nice to be with family. And the people that took my dog, or her dog, when she wasn't able to take care of him anymore, came to visit, and he's just a little butterball. And that family is just amazing. He lives with Kelly and Courtney and Callan, and he was so happy, and I'm so happy he's with a family that loves him as much as we did. And so now we're back on the grind. I got a bunch of interviews scheduled for the next few weeks, so stay tuned for lots and lots of interesting talks. Today's interview is with Donalee Moulton from Nova Scotia. Super, super cool lady. Knew nothing about her going into this. She reached out of the blue to schedule some time, and I said, great, this is awesome. Let's chat. She has a contemporary mystery series, well, one book out in the series right now, and also a historical mystery called Conflagration, and I can't say it, and she says it correctly in hers, but it's a French-Canadian, it's a Quebec historical mystery based on a true story, which is really cool, and so I can't wait to pick that up to learn a little bit more about my own past and history. But before that, things I'm obsessed with, not a ton, because it's been like a busy couple weeks at work, so like I haven't done a lot of stuff, and haven't been, of course I'm watching my TikToks, trying to think of TikTok ideas to use, but not doing much with it. One thing I'm obsessed with is French Canadian meat pies, which is a Thanksgiving staple in our family, so I have 3 mini ones in my fridge now for this week. It's the perfect kind of warming winter meal. It's just meat, potatoes, and a pie crust. I mean, you can't really go wrong with it. Other things I'm obsessed with, my cats, as always. Also, I think I mentioned this last time, but I am finally off Twitter and on Blue Sky, and I'm very much obsessed with the writing and book community on Blue Sky. Everybody's so supportive. Everybody's so helpful. I'm getting a lot of book recommendations, which is something I love. So I recommend, if you're a book writer, reader, publisher, etc., go forth and get those. And yeah, that's about it right now. Let's just say that. Sports-wise, the Patriots are on right now. It's not great. They just fumbled on the goal line, so that's depressing. But the Bruins have sort of turned it around a little bit. They're still not great, but the other night, Wednesday night, they played, and my mom's favorite player, Morgan Geekie, scored a goal, and I felt that was very apropos the night before her remembrance. So thank you, Morgan Geekie, for that, who I met, whose card is somewhere up here, his signed signature. The Celtics, still rolling. We're still doing great. So today, it's Sunday, I'm recording this, December 1st, rabbit. The Patriots are on, then the Bruins are at 3, which is right now, and then the Celtics are at 6:30. So lots of sports today. Still no movement on the Juan Soto signing. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you see me looking off to the side, it's because Captain's at the top of her scratching post Christmas tree, which if you follow me on the socials, you will see. And she's losing it. So, gotta love having a kitten. Oh, and she's fallen off. So that's really all that's going on. So without further ado, listen to this great, I think, a really awesome conversation with Donalee Moulton. All right, welcome back to Baseball, Books, and Banter with today's guest, Donalee Moulton from the Great White North, as I'm going to call it, in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Welcome, and tell my readers and listeners a little bit about yourself.
Look, delighted to be here. Thank you so much. And you're right about the Great White North. We've had an incredibly wonderfully warm November, and now temperatures are dipping down. But that sunshine you see behind me, and I wasn't going to give it up, right?
Yeah, don't give up the sun. If you get the sun, don't give it up.
No, not at all.
It's
Not
better
at all.
than
So I'm
snow.
glad to be here and glad to be talking about books. And in my case, books set in Canada.
Mhm.
So my first mystery book, Hung Out to Die, is the main character is American, but he's been transplanted to Nova Scotia. My second book is an historical mystery, and it takes place in 1734 in Montreal.
Mm.
So lots to learn in both cases.
As a French Canadian, not from my grandfather was born in Quebec. Um, and I just go back all the time because I love it. Montreal. I haven't gone in a while. My mom and I used to go for my birthday. We went to Quebec City and I loved it so much. And Montreal, which was great too. So I love Canada. Um, Sometimes I'm like, maybe it would be better to move up there at this, not to get political, but like it's been a rough year. So
Yeah, and you're more than welcome to
oh,
come.
and I watch what's the show? The Republic of Doyle in Newfoundland.
Oh,
And
yes.
actually, now that I think about it, my aunt has a friend who lives in Nova Scotia. And I can't remember the town, of course, but she does half of the year in Nova Scotia and half of the year in Florida. So she's one of those.
And I know what half she's here.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
obviously, yes,
yeah.
yes, 100%, 100%. Um, any snow yet?
No, I
Okay,
think we had a flake yesterday. We
okay.
don't get as much
Because you're on
snow
the
as you'd
water,
think we get,
right?
but no,
Okay,
some will come, and when it comes, it usually comes in the form of a storm.
yeah.
So we just hunker down, we
Yes.
stay in, we drink
Read.
hot chocolate with marshmallows, we have a
Yep.
fire, and life is good.
And read lots of books and maybe write.
Lots of books.
But so let's talk about Hung Out to Die. I'm not gonna let me just let you pronounce your main character's name first.
Or I would call him Real Brava.
Riel. Okay. I was looking, I was like, it's real or real, and I don't want to say it wrong.
And in the book, it makes a reference to the fact that it's actually Gabriel, but
Oh,
since he was little, he went by Riel.
that makes sense. And that would help me pronounce it because I
Yeah.
am one of those readers who, if I get it wrong and then somebody corrects me later, it's never going to be right in my head again. Like it's still going to be the wrong word. And that's how I read a lot of fantasy and a lot of sci-fi books. And that's how that goes. I'm like, I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, but I'm going to go with it but Gabriel Riel, that makes sense. I like that. And he is a security expert, right?
Back. He is his degree would be in law,
Hmm.
but he's now CEO of a cannabis
That's right.
corporation because cannabis is legal across Canada.
Okay.
So, you're more than welcome to come and have an edible and, smoke a little weed. It's all perfectly legitimate here. He is a transplanted American. So I have him based out of Santa Barbara with some political aspirations down the road. But his father in law, a senator, owns part of this company. He has landed in Nova Scotia and running this company quite successfully, but does find a murder getting in his way.
Hmm. As always. And
As
it's also legal in Massachusetts. So like we're good here too.
oh, there you go.
We
Yeah.
have a lot of dispensaries in my town. There's like three or four, and we're a pretty small town. So, but I have not partaken yet. If my parents are listening, we had
Good
a
for
big
you.
discussion about it. My uncle was a landscaper his entire life, and he's tall and he has back problems. He says I don't take any pain meds, just an edible at night, and it's
It's
great.
good to
And that's
go.
what I said. I said, you know what? That's because I mean, pain meds are addicting. And if you could do something holistically and it works, maybe that's for the best. And the book came out in 2023. How much did you have a familiarity with the cannabis industry, or did you have to do like a deep dive into the political world of it and everything?
I was a little lucky because my background is as a freelance journalist. And so one of the things that I wrote about was the cannabis sector.
Hmm.
I wrote about it a little bit from a health perspective, but more from a business
Yeah.
perspective. And one of the things I got to do was to tour a cannabis facility before it
Okay.
was opened. So once plants are in, you're not allowed to go in
Hmm.
unless you work there. But I saw the whole facility, I saw the whole security system, I saw how everything would work, except there were no plants.
Oh,
So that was an insight you wouldn't otherwise get.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
It was actually things you don't think about. One of the things I mentioned in the book is that there's an admin side,
Yeah.
where the CEO would have his office. And it's distinct from the production side. Literally, you cannot get from one side to the other without going outdoors and
Right.
coming back in a completely different door.
That's
And
fascinating.
it's all based on security.
And did that article that you wrote or research, did that really kind of say like, oh, I want to write a mystery because this would be a good place to kill somebody and also solve the murder? Or did the book idea come before the everything? Like, you know what I mean?
I do. And I think it was a little bit of both. I had been talking for some time about wanting to write a mystery
Yeah,
novel. And I eventually got tired of hearing myself talk about it and decided I actually had to do
sure.
it. And so initially I thought, okay, I want this guy to be in a sector that's a little sexy, right?
Yeah.
So I thought initially he would be in IT. But then I thought, no, I
Not
don't
sexy enough.
know. Well, and I don't know enough about it,
Yeah,
and it's changing all the time, and I'd
right.
have to get the language right. So I thought, you know what? I do know a lot about accounting. I've written
Yeah.
a lot for the accounting sector. I thought I'll make him an accountant. And to all the accountants out there who are absolutely wonderful, I then decided that probably wasn't sexy
Sexy enough.
enough. And then I landed on cannabis because
Yeah.
cannabis is still kind of new, certainly new
Yeah.
in Canada. It's got that kind of whole mystique about it.
Yeah.
And I did have all this insight from having written for cannabis publications and
Yeah.
for business publications.
That's a great, and it's one of those like because it's becoming so mainstream, so popular. So it's nice to have a book kind of in a world that people know. So as people start using cannabis more legally, um, I think that's great because we have our brewery books, we have our glass making books, and I write a baseball one because I love baseball. Like people like what they like, and if you can set something that's especially new, that's your market. I mean,
Well, and it's a good point in a couple of ways because of course, when the government announces here that cannabis is going to be legal
oh right,
across the country, I think making us only the second country in the
yeah.
world to do this, the outcry is fast and furious.
Mhm.
But by the time Hung Out to Die came out, we've settled in, like you say,
Right.
it's just you walk into
Every
a liquor
day.
store and they're selling cannabis. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I forgot about, it's just routine now. The
right,
panic has died down. So
right,
it gives the main character, he's not as much of a rebel. This is
sure.
now a business and in a flourishing sector. And so that's where I want him to be.
Yeah, and that's really cool that you marry the two, the unsexy side, the admin, the CEO, the business guy with the sexy side, which is a little bit more mysterious. And I did like in the Amazon, in the byline, it was like Riel is something attractive and razor sharp. And I was
I
like,
think
oh,
I
hello.
think it's ambitious. Yeah.
Ambitious. Okay. I knew it was
Yeah.
another good word. And I was like, but I really like that attractive was second on the list because I was like, okay, I get that character.
Yeah.
I can picture him in my head about how he would look
Oh,
as
good
the
for you.
CEO. You know what I mean? Like, ooh, like, I don't know. Like, I didn't read 50 Shades of Grey or watch 50 Shades of Grey, but that kind of vibe of a guy looking like the guy, he looks tough, but he's also a little bit of a marshmallow
And
inside.
I think that's a really good point. I didn't read it either, nor did I see the
Yeah.
movie, but that sense of self-assurance,
Yes.
he definitely has that. He walks into a room and he's confident because he's capable and
Right.
he looks good.
And it's not toxic. Like it's not a toxic
Yes, no,
masculinity where he's like, I'm the man and everybody loves
no,
me and I'm,
no.
it's that kind of masculinity that you're like, oh, yeah, that's a good guy at heart, but he's tough. Like I know he would get what needs to be done.
But Rial has a quirk, right? So Rial is a psychopath.
Mm. Well,
And he's not the Hannibal Lecter
no,
kind
no.
of psychopath. There's no violence, there's no gore, there's none of that. But he doesn't have the same empathy
Yeah.
that you and I would have. So he's aware when he walks into a room and something is happening, he may not be interpreting that something the
Sure.
same way that everybody else interprets it.
Well, it's
And
very Sherlock Holmesian. He's not known for his
a
empathy.
little of that. Yeah.
He's
He doesn't fit in, but he
yeah,
doesn't want the world to know he
right.
doesn't
He
fit
play
in.
acts that
Hmm.
he's fitting in and knowing. And I think a lot of people can identify with that in like different groups. I mean, writers, especially with our imposter syndrome, every
Exactly.
book we put out, you're like, nope, fake it till you make it. Like, I mean, I do moderate panels at crime conferences. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I have two books, and do they know that I like sit on my couch and watch football all day on Sunday? No, of course not. But I feel like I fake it till I make it, which is good.
And Rial is the same way. Rial has learned how to behave in certain
Yeah.
situations. And if a situation is new to him, he takes a moment to look around and invariably asks his wife, Tiffany. Tiffany knows he's
Yeah.
different. I don't think she's labeled what the difference is,
Right.
but she knows how to help him out.
That's nice. That's a kind of a good relationship to have.
It is.
And again, it's a non-toxic psychopath, which sounds weird to say, but I mean, he goes out of his way to say like, how am I supposed to react to this?
Yeah.
And he wants to make sure that people are comfortable, but not, but he doesn't know. I like that.
Yeah, the fellow that dies is the chief financial officer of
Mhm.
the cannabis corporation, and he has a son. And if I remember correctly, Bran is 12 years old, and so Bran's family starts to rely a little on him for some help. And one of the things they do is they ask Rial if he will chaperone
Oh no.
Bran's school trip to the Discovery Center. Well, Rial is just beside himself. He
Yeah.
doesn't know 12-year-olds. He
Yeah.
doesn't know kids. He doesn't have any kids. What the hell is he going to do
Yeah.
with a busload? Anyway, he goes, and you can see him trying to figure out how things work and how things don't work. But he's astute enough to be able to kind of sit back and wait rather than rush
Yeah.
in and make a mistake.
Oh, I love that. That's a deep, deep character. So hung out to dry. Look at you just said that hung out to dry, and I said it, and I'm like, no, it's going to be a murder title. I'll know it. Hung out to die.
You
I
got it.
assume that means because you have to hang the cannabis.
And in part because the main character, the victim dies by
Okay.
hanging, and it
That
is a
makes more sense.
cannabis corp. Yeah.
Um, so that's the first in the series. Do you have a second one planned, plotted, written, anything, or?
I have a second one that lives somewhere in the cloud,
Hmm,
and at some point the cloud will come down to earth.
right.
I in as I was thinking about what to write next, my publisher approached me. She had a series of books that span every province and territory in
Oh,
Canada. They were all historical mysteries, so they were all based on something that had actually happened in
yeah.
that province. She lost her Quebec writer,
Oh,
your ancestors'
I know,
writer,
probably.
unexpectedly, and asked if I would step in and write the Quebec story. And of course, I jokingly say, "Here I am. I'm not from Quebec. I
Right.
don't speak French. I don't write historical mysteries." So of course, I said yes,
And now it's a
and now it's a book.
2024
But
Daphne du Maurier Award winner.
it is,
Oh, I
yes,
mean,
that was thrilling.
I mean, you did something right, right?
Well, and I must admit, I had a fabulous story.
Yeah.
It was a young woman, an enslaved Black woman who was accused of burning down the lower town of Montreal, the Merchants' Quarter. And because she was put on trial,
Mhm.
even though it was 1734, that whole process is documented. So there's access to
Wow.
information you wouldn't otherwise have. And I put a mystery over that. So
Yeah.
I'm not talking for her or pretending to be
Right.
her, but I have a character that's back here on the side trying to figure
Okay.
out if she's guilty or innocent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah. That was that conflagration. Is that how I say that word?
Conflagration.
Conflagration.
Yeah.
Um, it sounded fascinating. Just even reading the blurb, you're like, wow. And that's one of those stories that probably growing up in Quebec, you might not even have heard before. And then you hear about, and you're like, this is based on it, like not based on a
I
true story,
know.
but the story background is based on a real event. And it's kind of like, wow. And to think, because we here in America, I'm going to speak for all Americans on this, we don't know a lot. We don't know a lot of history outside of our own, and even then sometimes we don't know the whole story of America. So to know that stuff like this wasn't just happening in America,
Yeah.
where people of color were accused of things that they may or may not have done, and that the justice system was just as screwed up there as it was here is was now granted, I read a lot of Tudor history, so if you ask me about Henry VIII, maybe I can tell you that. But like, yeah, I mean, we don't know about the settlement schools, the settler schools with the indigenous
Yes, yeah, we call
children,
them residential schools. Yeah.
residential schools. We don't know much about that. And weirdly, the way I found out about that is Drag Race Canada had an event that's celebrated some of
Interesting.
those children. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Didn't know that. Did you find the historical mystery part harder to do, or because of your background in journalism, where you're kind of used to digging a little deeper? Did you enjoy that part of the research, or were you like, ugh, not again? I'm not doing this after this. This is one and
Well,
done.
you've raised a couple of interesting points because I think that as I researched Angelique's, the woman's name was Marie Joseph Angelique, and as I researched her story, and you researched it primarily through the court
Right.
transcripts because there was nothing else really that would have existed. Part of you thinks, I grew up in Canada. Why do I not know this?
Yeah.
And Canada loves to be the underground railway. We
Sure.
love to be the savior. And what becomes quite clear is that in Canada, in that period, slavery was essential to the fur trade,
Right.
right? It couldn't exist without that. So there's a whole bunch of information that you're learning as the writer who has
Yeah.
to kind of
Massage it into
infuse
a
that into the
plot.
book. But then you're the Canadian thinking, oh my God, this happened in my country. I've never heard of this. Now that said, her story is more well known in Quebec, still not widely known,
Right.
but more well known. And the lower town of Montreal, old Montreal, now has a little
Yeah.
plaque in her honor.
Oh, okay.
Not saying whether she was guilty or innocent,
Right.
because we will never know that,
Sure.
basically saying this happened to her because slavery was part of the fabric
Right.
of Canada, and we need to acknowledge that
Yeah.
as a country.
For sure, 100%. And I think that's great. Like you said, they don't pass judgment on it. Just
No.
here's the facts. And if you're not getting taught it in school, at least if you go to visit the old port, old town, Montreal, and you see the plaque, you go, interesting. Let me think about
And
that.
to your point about sources that you can
Yeah.
rely on, all of this documentation is in the Montreal archives.
Yeah.
Of course, it's in French and it's in old French, but several sites have translated it, and there's lots of translation software out there now. So my background says that you get two sources for
Mhm.
everything you include.
Right.
And that proved to be fairly easy to do because while there hasn't been a lot written generally about slavery in Canada, when there is, Angelique's story almost invariably comes up
Sure.
because there is documentation.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm excited to check it out because, like I said, obviously being French Canadian, we had American Thanksgiving here. I know for
Yes.
you guys it's just Thursday, but that was a joke on the hockey thing. They said, oh, and as we call it in Canada, Thursday. And I was like, accurate. Um, we do French Canadian meat pies, tortillere,
Oh, yes.
every year. And so I have them in my fridge right now because I forgot to bring them to Thanksgiving. So that was a my bad. Sorry, Aslan family. You didn't get my meat pies, but I also don't cook with onions. So you might not like it, people. I don't cook with a lot of flavor. But yeah, I think that's, I'm excited to read it because I don't know a lot of history about Quebec and where I came from. You don't know what you don't know until you read it, and then you're like, oh. And I
Exactly.
mean, here we have the similar story in New Bedford, Mass, of Lizzie Borden, where
Oh, yes.
she was accused of killing her parents. or her mother and her father and stepmother. And while everybody thinks she did it, there's still questions about why, like, was she abused? Was this, and this, and this? So I feel like that's another, you don't know the story. You can guess, you can infer, you can from these sources of the trial and everything, but we don't know because nobody
No.
is alive anymore to tell you yay or nay, you know?
And it's an interesting point that you make, because the only thing that my publisher said to me when she kind of assigned this
Hmm.
book was, she said that historical mysteries have to be accurate to the history.
Yes.
So you do get very aware that you've got to get the date right, and if you say it was April 17th, 1734, you have to go back and look, was that a Saturday
It's
or a
raining.
Sunday?
Yeah.
But I also find there were things I hadn't thought of. So you get caught up in the trial and the
Oh,
accusations. And at one point, though, my main character goes into the main room, and it's early in the morning, and I have him pouring himself a cup of coffee. And then I think,
do they?
gee, did they drink coffee in
Yeah.
1734? I have no idea. So those, I have him put boots on at one point, and I
Yeah.
think, did they wear boots?
Right.
And if they did, what were they made of? So all of those things you have to research in addition to the crime
Right.
itself.
Right. And I love historical mysteries. So I don't write them because I'm terrified of all those things you just
Yeah.
mentioned. Because I'm afraid I would always forget something. And then you get angry letters from like one person who's like, I studied this in college and that is not right. And it's like, okay, I'm sorry. That's why I don't do a lot of guns in my book, because I don't want people to,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I also don't want to research guns because they terrify me. So
Yeah,
no.
not the most pleasant of topics.
No, so I'm just like, if and I think my character, because she's an amateur sleuth, she wouldn't know about guns. So if somebody
Right.
points a pistol at her, she's gonna be like, "That's a gun," and the guy's like, "Well, it's a blah 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 blah." She wouldn't know that. She'd be like, "Just stop pointing the gun at me. Just do that."
And
So do you find yourself wanting to do more historical, or were you like, I'm good with one for now and go back to my contemporaries?
as the conflagration was going through the editing and production
Yeah.
process, I decided that I would start a new series. And this one feels a little bit more comfortable to me. There are three women who meet in a yoga studio and end up solving a crime that a watch gets stolen.
Ooh.
And then I kind of put that one over here as I was getting it kind of read by beta readers. And I thought, well, I'll start on the second one.
Hmm.
So I now have those two, and they're both coming out next year.
Oh, that's
I
exciting.
know, I
I
know.
feel like we should mention that you are a yogi.
I am.
Yeah.
I am.
So that's why yoga, it's not just a random thing.
Yeah. But to your point, you don't have, if you're going to talk about guns, you have to know about guns.
Yeah.
If I'm going to talk about yoga, I feel comfortable that I know
Right.
yoga, or at least I know where to find out
Right. Or
about
know the people that
yoga.
you can reach out
Yeah.
to and be like, hey, I was just gonna try to say a yoga word. And I was like, that's not right. Don't say that. She'll be like, what are you talking about? I'm like, downward dog. That's easy. It's an
There-
easy.
And one of the things that you're talking about, though, that I think is very helpful for writers, and sometimes we don't do it as much as we could, but we don't have to make life more complicated.
Right.
So when I was writing Hung Out to Die, I thought, okay, Rial is from the US. He's from Santa Barbara. I know Santa Barbara this
Yeah.
much. I could research Santa Barbara. I know people in Santa Barbara. And I thought, but why do that? Why make it more difficult for myself? Because I've got to research being a psychopath. I've got to
Right.
confirm my cannabis knowledge. Why add more to the plate?
Yeah.
I said, if I put them in Nova Scotia, I know Nova Scotia.
Right.
It's going to
Right.
be second nature to me. And so I came to appreciate that that's not a cop out. That's not
Oh,
being lazy. That's
not at
just
all.
gives you the energy to focus on the other parts of the book you want to focus on.
I love that. That I think is important for writers to hear, is that you don't have to needlessly complicate your life. I
Yeah.
set my book in the town I live in because I'm like, I live here. I love it here. I know my character would love it here, but now I can focus on other things like the actual murder. And and then you could put like little not and people in places that are real like to see themselves in the book, like, oh, I go to that Dunkin' Donuts because Massachusetts, got to do it, and stuff like that. And so I like that you don't have to needlessly complicate your life. Like you said, there are some things you need to
Yep.
needlessly complicate, like if you say there's a poison, you got to make sure it's the right poison and stuff like that. But if it's a town the guy's lived in for like 3 months, who cares?
But the other thing I find that readers like is learning about places where they haven't been or connecting with places that they have been. So several people have said to me, oh, it's so Nova Scotian. And I think, really, really, what makes it Nova
Yeah,
Scotian? And then you think, well, how could it not be?
that's
I'm from
true.
Nova Scotia and it's set in Nova Scotia. A number of years ago, a couple of years ago now, the Crime Writers of Canada was celebrating its 40th anniversary, and they decided to celebrate by putting out an anthology. And the theme was cold. So you could submit a story.
Yeah.
It could be a cold case, it could be a relationship that had gone cold. And I took the easy way out. I said, I'm just going to set it in a place that's cold,
Yeah,
temperature wise, because I had worked out of Nunavut, which is up by the
I was gonna say that
American
sounds north.
dew line. Yeah. It's been minus 51
Oh,
in Nunavut when I was there. But I thought, okay, I know enough, and my character was coming from the outside, so it wasn't like I was
you were a
talking about what it
local
was
living
like to
there,
live there.
right?
And wonderfully, the story got accepted for inclusion in the anthology. But when you got the judges' comments back, all three of the judges said, how interesting to be taken to a place where we normally wouldn't
Right,
visit.
right.
And I thought, yes, because then you feel like you know this place and it comes
Yep.
alive to you. And that's fun too when you can do that for readers.
Especially if it's a place that's minus 51. I don't want to go
Minus
there, but
51.
I can live there vicariously through books. That's totally fine with me. I don't mind that. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the locked, or not the locked room. Well, locked room, but on an island. So, the
Yes.
self-contained island mysteries when there's like 8 people and then people start getting picked off, I'm like all in. My friend just wrote one that had a seance involved, and I was like, yes, that's exactly what I want. Just give me more. I haven't read it yet. It's in the pile here, but Sharon Healy Yang, she's been on the podcast. She's writes a historical series, and it
Oh,
was a
lovely.
mysterious island, and then there's a seance, and then like people die, and I'm like, check. Yep, that's all of my boxes.
It's important though that plot thing, because I think for me, I'm more of I like the puzzle. I want to
Right.
figure out the puzzle. And so you have to be fair and
Yep.
reasonable.
Oh yeah.
Um, but I have to be, I have to at least have enough clues that I could have figured it out.
Right.
If I
Even if you
didn't,
got it
that's
wrong,
okay.
right. At
Yeah.
least you felt like you were following along to do it. We have about 10 minutes left, so I don't want to forget to get your book recommendations and or a book you just read that you loved, or anything, any book recommendation you'd like to give.
Well, and that got me thinking.
Yeah.
So this is the book I'm reading now, right?
Richard
The
Osman. That
and
is that the
most
is that the Thursday?
That's the fourth.
Okay, the fourth of the Marlowe Murder Club.
The Thursday Murder Club.
Thursday Murder Club.
And there is a fifth,
Ooh.
not out yet, as far as I know. And this, of course, it's light and fun, but it's very
Yeah.
heartwarming. And I think of that as being quintessentially British.
Yes.
Like they've got this little exterior, but to
Yep.
your point, you chip away at it and there's a marshmallow underneath.
Yep.
And he's consistently got great plots that you
Yeah.
can follow along with and subplots, but he's also got these wonderful characters
And
that
he's
you
a funny
follow.
guy
Yeah, it's
outside of the book world.
hilarious.
Yeah, and he's a funny guy like on chat shows, because I got BritBox, so I watch a lot of chat shows. But yeah, I've heard, and then it's going to be a movie or a mini series coming soon too.
Apparently Netflix
Yeah.
has it, and Helen Mirren is in it, and
Yep.
Pierce Brosnan.
Uh-huh. Oh, I haven't read the books, but like, yeah, you've already
Oh,
got me with the character. So I'm like halfway. I think my dad just got the most recent one, so I'll probably steal it from him when I get a chance.
yeah. I think like many series, you can come in anywhere but the best place to start is with the first one, right?
Right.
You'll really get to know them.
Right.
This got me thinking about the fact that it's a British book written by a British author. So I thought, well, you know what? Here's some others. So this one is The Little Old Lady. There we go. The Little Old Lady Strikes Again out of Sweden.
Oh my
And this
God.
too is part of a series. Similar to the Thursday Murder Club, there's a group of people in a retirement home who want to protest conditions in the retirement home and end up solving a mystery and changing much of the way that
Mm.
Sweden operates. But I thought very different from Richard Osman's
Yeah.
book, but also there's a whole different way of writing.
Yeah.
And I wondered if it might be a European way of writing or a non-North American way of writing.
Yeah.
And it led me to this one, which is harder to read. And it's called The Girl Who Saved the King of Sweden, right? And again, by Jonas Johansson. And the whole idea is this young woman who starts her life in Africa, ends up in Sweden, and she has some nuclear bombs with her. It gets very complicated and very clever. But from a plot perspective, how everything ties in, what happened over here led to here, led to here. And in some ways, it's just absolutely silly, but
Right.
clever,
Yeah.
right?
There's
And
a
I thought,
difference between silly for silly's sake and silly
yeah,
for clever, which is a very
yeah,
British, I feel very European kind of vibe.
yeah.
Clever and silly at the same time.
Yes, and plays, you can't dismiss it
Right.
because it could be important,
Right.
right? It's also a different way of telling,
Mm.
um, because as writers, we're often told, show, don't tell. And I would say certainly the two books out of
Yeah.
Sweden, and to a certain extent, Richard Osman's books are more telling than
Yeah.
showing,
I agree.
and very engaging,
Yeah.
very entertaining.
I love that. I love also learning about, I mean, because there was that big for a while there in the 2000s with the girl with the dragon tattoo books from over there.
Yes,
Like a very,
yes.
once you get immersed in that, you're like, oh, I want to read more. I want to know more about these people. And now that the world is much more open with translations and all this kind of stuff, we can read more mysteries from
Yeah.
over. I know Iceland Noir just happened recently. I had a bunch of friends go over there. And then there's Bloody Scotland. So like mystery
Yes.
really trying to expand. And I love that. Once I get over my fear of flying, we'll go to more of these. I swear. Not fear, anxiety. Let's put it that way. Um, you're a member of crime. Yeah, the Crime Writers of Canada,
I
Canada
am.
Crime Writers. Yeah, which I think is similar to our Sisters in Crime group.
And I'm a member of Sisters in Crime as well.
Perfect. Which I'm going to throw out my invitation. It's next year. Come to the Crime Bake in Dedham, Massachusetts, where
Oh,
we have a great time. Lori Raider Day is going to be our guest of honor. So I'm
fabulous.
on the social media, so I just feel like I have to tell people all the time. And also, I'm vice president of the New England branch as of January 1. So I
Wonderful.
need to tell people. um, but yeah, it's, and I think as a mystery, as any writer, even not mystery, I feel like those organizations help a lot. And so it's great to see that it's happening all over, not just in our little pockets of where we live, which is really, and then we get to meet people like this. And I get to virtually travel to sunny Nova Scotia today.
Still shining.
It is sunny here. It's like 31. So we're not super cold, but I'm getting my wood stove cleaned this week, so it's going to get cold soon, and I'm ready. I'm ready for some snow. But where can people find you online?
I would say everywhere possible, but the easiest thing to do is to go to DonaleeMoulton.com and everything you need is right there.
And I will put that link in the little description so people can just click straight from there, so they don't have
Perfect.
to worry about spelling, because I am a writer, but I'm not a speller, so I get it. Um, but thank you again for joining, and thank you for reaching out of the blue. I was like, this is a new author to me. I was like writing things down. It was very exciting.
Oh, look, this has been wonderful.
What a fun conversation, right? I can't wait to check out her yoga mysteries. As someone who likes yoga, because I like to stretch, uh, I think it'll be fun and to have kind of a multitude of characters. I will say, as much as I love to stretch and I love yoga, child pose is my favorite. Cat cow, love that. Those are all my yoga words. But yeah, so I'm really excited to get to know her more and maybe read some of her books coming out. And also, I really can't wait to read the historical one because for those that know me, I'm on a big historical mystery kick. And I could just read historical mysteries all the live long day, which leads me to the books that I recommend or that I am currently reading. Mainly, I'm reading two right now at the same time. One is part of a series, the Harriet Gordon Mystery Series by A.M. Stewart, and it's Agony and Amethyst, and it's the last, kind of the closing journey of Harriet Gordon, and I'm really bummed that there's going to be no more unless they redo it, but it's based out in Singapore or Southeast Asia, and it's 1920s-ish, and it's just really good. I just love it. So if you're into that kind of era of mysteries, of women's suffrage, of, overthrowing British empires, etc., you would like this book. And there's a cute, well, not cute, I guess he's a handsome policeman who has a lot going on in this book. So it's really good. I talked about this book before that I was reading, but now I'm actually almost finished. Look at that. Just 100 pages to go. I want to finish it tonight. Is The Scandalous Confessions of Lydia Bennet Witch by Melinda Taub. Big Pride and Prejudice gal. Love all the Bennet sisters. There's a mystery series featuring Mary Bennet that I love. And this one's really good. It really started popping off in the middle of the book. And so now I'm like, I got to finish this. I got to finish it. I'm looking behind me because I have about 3 bins of books piled here that I want to go through. And I don't know if I mentioned this last time, I won a Barnes & Noble gift card from our Old Colony Library Network book crawl. And of course, I immediately went to Barnes & Noble and bought many books that I have not gotten to yet. But one I wanted to talk about was because the young bookseller recommended it. I guess it was very popular on Book Talk. And she said it was just one of her favorite reads of the year. It's a fantasy. It's called Night Strider by Sophia Slade. And I think the second one's supposed to come out in January. So I haven't started it yet, but I do appreciate a good recommendation from someone who's read it, which was the bookseller. And she was really nice. And so I finally picked that up. Another one that just came out, I think I've talked about her before, Jennifer Estep's Only Cold Depths, which is a Galactic Bonds book. If you're into the super sci-fi like I am right now, I'm also reading a book called Helix that's set, out into the world. Basically, Earth is uninhabitable, and so they have to find new worlds to live in, and that's kind of what I'm reading. So if any of these sound interesting to you and you want to know more, just call me, reach out. As always, books make great Christmas gifts, I think. So if you want signed copies of the Ballpark Mysteries along with some extra swag, just reach out via email or socials and I will get back to you. If not, you can also go to the Cozy Cottage in Hanson. There's signed books there. There's also books available at Barnes & Noble and Hingham, and The Next Chapter and more in Quincy, and obviously also on my website. Book 3 still tentatively scheduled for February, so we'll see what happens. No news is good news, I guess. We'll see. Let's put it that way. Hopefully I'll have a cover for you guys soon, and if you sign up for my newsletter, you will see it first in my newsletter. And you can also sign up through my Facebook page if you want to receive a special Christmas card with my 3 cats illustrated on the front. Other than that, there is not much else to say. So until next time, happy reading and go Red Sox.